Hello again, and today we're going to talk about the nervous system. So this is going to be the first of our nervous system lectures, and this is the last unit of the semester for your Anatomy 1 course. So let's talk about the nervous system. Let's go back to what we learned in the very first unit. Nervous system is your major control system, right? And we learned in the muscle unit that the nervous system works by using electrical activity, which we called action potentials. So these signals that the brain sends are action potentials. Well, the nervous system is made up of several different components. You have your brain and your spinal cord and all the nerves that go to and from the brain and to and from the spinal cord. And so the basic function of this nervous system is to bring information into the brain and then to send some kind of a response back out. So we can look at this in a schematic, and let's imagine that there's a glass of water, and we see that with our eyes. Well, this image is turned into an electrical event, input, and we call that sensory input, and that then goes to the brain. And in the brain, I like to think of the brain as like a computer. And so the brain will integrate that information. It will assess what is it and what do we need to do about it. And so in this case, the response would be your output. The response is a motor output to a muscle to pick up the water so that you can then drink it. So when you think about the nervous system, think of these three main parts. Information coming in, which is sensory, integration, which is the decision making, and then the response or the output. And so you can think about this in several other ways. Imagine that this was a rose and then you smelled it. That would be sensory input. Your brain would say, ooh, that smells good, and you may send a response out to your arm to bring the rose up to your nose. It could be a piece of chocolate and you taste the chocolate and that causes you to salivate. So the motor output would be going to your salivary glands, causing them to make more saliva. So it's just a circuit of bringing sensory information in, either sight or vision or smell or taste or touch or pain or hot or cold. Any type of sense goes to your brain. Your brain analyzes it and then decides what the response would be. Maybe if you have a cold receptor, that goes to your brain and that sends a signal, a motor response to your muscles to shiver. Okay, so homeostasis. So the brain is playing a role in homeostasis as well. So these three parts, input, integration, and output. And we're going to talk about this as we go throughout the nervous system. Now, when we talk about the nervous system, we divide it into several different categories. And very rarely do I use this word, memorize, but I would like you to essentially memorize this chart because this is your roadmap to the nervous system. And what we're going to do over the coming weeks is we're going to take each one of these boxes and go into them in more and more detail. So this is the roadmap of what we're going to cover over your next couple of weeks. And the very first division of the nervous system is into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And I use the word or the letters CNS and PNS for shorthand. So central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Your central nervous system is simply your brain and spinal cord. And those are your integrative and control centers. So the area that makes the decisions and sends a response. The brain and the spinal cord. Now everything else comes with the nerves, which is your peripheral nervous system. And these are the nerves that go out of and come back to the brain and spinal cord. And in particular, we're talking about the cranial nerves, which are nerves that come off the brain and go back to the brain. And then the spinal nerves are nerves that come off the spinal cord and then some bring information back to the spinal cord. So this is the way that your central nervous system and the rest of your body communicates. So these nerves go out to and back from different parts of your body. So they send information, responses to parts of the body, and they send sensory information back from those parts of the body to the central nervous system. Now, the peripheral nervous system, this is where it gets complicated. It can be divided the first time into your sensory or afferent division or your motor or efferent division. Afferent means towards, so your afferent division is taking information input, input from your sensors to your brain and spinal cord, and then your motor is your output, okay? So sensory afferent input, motor efferent output. Your input can come from somatic fibers, viscera, so it can be vision, it can be touch, it can be you're hungry, your stomach growling, maybe some abdominal pain, maybe pain in your chest, so just pain or feeling or cold or just any kind of sensory receptors all through your body, that's information. Now the efferent division, the output, these are nerve fibers that take your response out to muscles and glands. So skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands like your salivary gland, adrenal glands, all kind of glands in your body. They're going to do the output or the response. Now the motor division, the efferent division, can be divided even further into a somatic nervous system and an autonomic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system, think of this as the voluntary one. So this is basically skeletal muscle. So this is when you want to move something, you send your output to your skeletal muscle and you tell your muscles that you want to contract it. So here's a somatic nerve going out to a muscle saying we want to contract that muscle. Your autonomic, think automatic, it's your involuntary. So these are going to be impulses that you take out to like the heart, smooth muscle, glands, things like that. Now this autonomic nervous system can then be divided once again into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And so we'll talk about this in more detail later in the semester. I'm going to do a little bit about it right now. We'll go into more detail later. Kind of a mnemonic to remember is sympathetic is your fight or flight, and parasympathetic is rest and digest. So if something comes into the room and frightens you, you need to get away, that's going to be your sympathetic division that kind of turns on, get your heart rate up, get your blood pumping so you can get away. Your parasympathetic nervous system, when you're kind of chilled out after dinner and you need to digest all that food, take a nap, that's your parasympathetic nervous system. Now we're going to cover this in detail later on in the semester, but I wanted to just give you a little bit of thought now about how it works. Again, your autonomic or automatic nervous system is divided into parasympathetic, rest and digest, and sympathetic, fight or flight. And most organs, not all, but most organs have innervation or a nerve that comes from both of these divisions. So for example, let's just say the heart. If you're in your parasympathetic resting stage, then impulses are going to come from the parasympathetic nervous system and innervate the heart, and the heart will just beat at its normal rate. You're at rest. Now, let's suppose a big scary monster from under your bed jumps out and grabs you. Well, you need to get away. So your fight or flight or sympathetic nervous system will then send a signal causing your heartbeat to accelerate. And we're going to go through these organs later in the semester, and again, we'll go over that. But that's just an example to let you kind of start thinking about the autonomic nervous system. Fight or flight or rest and digest. Now this was a short video. What I want you to do is I've made you a blank page and I want you to be able to fill this back in. If you can do this, you're halfway home for the nervous system. So take this blank page and what I've talked to you about and see if you can fill in all of these blanks, all these squares, and you'll be making a lot of headway toward learning about the nervous system. Then as we move through each one of these boxes in more detail, you'll be ahead of the game. That's all I got for you today. See you the next one.